Welcome to New Game Plus, a retro gaming podcast where three guys spend 7 days playing one old game and then we talk about it. My name's Dustin.
My name's Kenny.
Nolan, curtains.
And this is episode 295.
Whoa. We're 5 away from
Whoa.
300 guys.
From
Yeah.
300
That's big.
guys. Woo! It's going to be a lot of guys.
That's a lot of guys.
300 will also coincide with our 6-year anniversary as a podcast.
Did we plan that? Yes.
Yes, of course. Because every 50 weeks, we are a weekly podcast, is a new year.
Do you want to quit?
Thereabouts.
Ish.
No, I've never fully wanted to quit. Do either of you want to quit?
No.
Nah.
It's too much fun.
I do feel like Kenny's nah was not fully there.
Give him a couple more years, that nah will turn into kind of.
Maybe. All right, remind me, did either of you play Stardew Valley?
Absolutely.
Not.
Kenny, did your wife?
Nope.
Did either of your podcasting friends?
Yes.
My
Okay, yeah,
my,
both
of
my
them.
network of podcasting friends.
Both Nolan and I did. It's a wonderful indie, pretty much one-man developed game.
Only
Single.
one. Well, now
single
it's not.
guy dev.
But
Right, now he's
yeah.
got probably a team, but still, just so a product of love, right?
Sure.
The creator of Stardew Valley, Concerned Ape, tweeted this past week saying, "I'm pleased to announce the first official Stardew Valley Cup. It's a competition of skill, knowledge, and teamwork with a prize pool of over 40K.
Carrots. 40K.
See some of Stardew's most dedicated players in their element. Main event is September 4th at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time." So, it is time for us to welcome Stardew Valley to the lucrative realm of esports.
I have a question. I have a couple questions.
I've got a lot of questions.
How?
How?
And 2, 40K is like 10 times more than some major fighting game tournaments nowadays.
Really?
Yeah. That's a lot of money for a freaking Stardew Valley competition. Come on.
Yeah. I mean,
How?
How do you even win at Stardew Valley?
More carrots?
well, it's not going to be did you just make the joke again,
Yeah.
Nolan?
Yeah.
Okay. Try it a third time here in just a bit, and I bet
I
it'll go over
was.
really well. Listen, Stardew Valley is great. It's not going to be a play from the beginning to the end type thing. In the tweet, it says something about teamwork, so maybe it's like a collaborative thing. I have no idea, but I do know that it's not the first like farming simulator to have some kind of competition. I think Farming Simulator, I think that's an actual game, has some competitive things that go down
Real
in
life
that
farmers
sport.
compete?
Do they?
Sure.
For
In
crops?
the free market, yeah. More
In the
carrots.
free market?
I like this idea because...
Carrots!
Thank you. I like this idea because it will put the game in the spotlight, at least for a moment again.
15 minutes, yeah.
You know, he's probably working on another game behind the scenes, but this is fun. I'm for this.
If nothing else, he's getting his $40,000 back in advertising value just from us talking about the fact that this is happening.
Yeah, you're welcome. Concerned.
This right
You're
now,
welcome, Stardew.
Mr.
Well,
Stardew?
I think his first name
I
is
didn't say
Concerned.
Mister. I just said Stardew. We're on a first name basis, though, the game and I.
I don't know how the competitive nature of this is going to work because it is not inherently a competitive styled game.
I'm about to get good at it.
This game is more of like a peaceful, slow,
Yeah.
played over multiple years and just build up your own economy. It's not competitive.
It's not stressful.
At all. But within it, you've got fishing, you've got mining. It could be first to like start a game and get to an ancient fruit. I don't know. I know that's something in the game, but it will be interesting to watch. I'm not going to compete in it, but I am going to try to pull it up on Twitch and watch it again September 4th, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard. Any interest to watch it from either of you?
I want to compete in it. 40K.
Well, no, I know you said that, but you're not going to.
More carrots.
Kenny,
I have zero interest.
okay. You should play it. It's a
It's
wonderful
good.
game.
It's fun. Yeah.
I know it is. There's a couple of games that I know I would love that are on my I shouldn't play them because it'll be bad for me list.
Yeah.
Stardew's up there. Factorio's up there.
Kenny, you're only ever going to
Terraria's up
play
there.
Hades and that other game. Like, just
DCS.
admit that. Yes, that's all you're ever
I
going
played
to play.
2 games at a time, and I'm slow to shift those games.
Okay. Well, you know, my wife was a big Stardew Valley fan. She played a lot of Stardew Valley, probably even more than me, and she put in many hours back when it released. So maybe I should get my Lil Bay back into it, and then she can play it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like in our retro game of the week, featuring no carrots, I don't think. Destiny of an Emperor.
Overview.
Destiny of an Emperor is Capcom's first ever attempt at making an RPG.
Okay. Not their last.
Not their last. Came out in 1989 in Japan with the super awesome name, translated, I don't actually speak Japanese, but The Devouring of Heaven and Earth, which
I like
sounds
that.
awesome.
Yeah, that sounds cooler than Destiny of an Emperor. Both sound cool.
Absolutely. And then it got localized and released in English in North America in 1990 with the significantly less cool title Destiny of an Emperor.
2 quick things. One, Kenny, I'm super proud of you for not saying late 80s and instead saying 1989.
That's big.
Boom. You just said it like a
big.
man.
I'm all about the facts today.
And then number 2, I had you had said it was the first Capcom RPG, and then I specifically brought up it wasn't the last. Can either of you name other Capcom?
Yeah, we played it
RPGs?
a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah. You know which one.
You know.
I don't
Like
know if we
that.
did. Maybe we did. But
Yeah.
I have on here Breath of Fire, that whole
Yeah,
series, and
that's what I'm
we
talking
played
about.
Oh, did we play that recently?
Yeah, 2.
Somewhat recently. Okay. Monster Hunter, I think, is part RPG for sure. And then Nolan, would you consider, it was on the list, would you consider Mega Man Battle Network to be RPG?
No.
Okay. Well, other people would.
Maybe.
Other people. Okay. Well, enough
It
to be
for
on
sure
this
is.
list.
Yeah.
There's not tons of Capcom RPGs, but there was a first.
And in that first, you are aptly living up to your name, as very early in the game, the main character, Liu Bei,
Little Bay.
Lil Bay.
not Liu Bei, Liu Bei is promoted to be emperor in place, but because he successfully defended his village from a group of rebels, the Yellow Scarves. And he's then tasked with him and his buddy generals are Zheng Fei and Guan Yu
Nice.
Okay.
are tasked with, being an emperor, successfully defeating enemies, and ultimately, if you give this game enough time, like uniting China into one cohesive unit of gameplay.
All in a day's work.
All in a day's work. Probably not a day's work, because this is a relatively long game. To do this, your sort of RPG style leading armies to kind of fight other armies and defend your honor,
I'm bored.
What's the joke about armies and sleeveys? Because that's funny.
Armies and what? Sleepies?
Yeah, his
is
little
funny,
armies
but I
and his
forget
little
it.
sleeveys. I forget, but that is the punchline.
I'm
though,
too young.
So like, what?
You are. It's an old person joke for sure.
This game might be the first game that we played based on a manga, based on a 14th century historical novel.
It might be.
Based on a very real period of time in ancient China.
It's niche.
Doubt.
Let's say that. Yeah. I didn't know the manga part until recently. I thought, because you said something last week about it being based on a book series, but
Right.
that's a lot of content to be translated to eventually a video game.
Yeah. So this week we had a lot of work to do, not just playing the game, but reading the entire manga series.
Time traveling to see it firsthand.
Of course.
Right.
And
raising an army. Uniting China.
There's no like, it's not. I'll just say, you named 3 generals that work together: Liu Bei, Guan Yu, and who was the third?
Zhang Fei.
Zhang Fei. There's 3 of us. I'm just saying.
It's based on NGP.
Well, no, we time traveled and we fulfilled our manifest destiny.
I'm Liu Bei.
Who's who?
Dustin's Liu Bei.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you have their portraits pulled up? We'll see at a later time.
Okay.
Do you have story? I mean, I know I kind of just set up that it is like it is. There is I found out this week from Carlisle in particular that what I just mentioned, the Romance of the 3 Kingdoms, is a very big genre, a very big something, like a point of reference for a lot of material, whether it's books, manga, anime, video games. It's like a very important part, and it's been fantasized since then, like much of history. This is one of those pieces of media to come out from the Romance of the 3 Kingdoms.
Would you say that this is almost, and I don't know enough about it to equate, but it feels like what you're describing to me would say that this is sort of the Asian-centric version of like the Arthurian legend. Something that's told and retold and popular and kind of in their lore and like a little bit of history, but lots of like fluff around it that's not.
Yeah.
So like it's a big deal.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really good, Kenny. Like, and I'm not even saying that. That's really I'm proud of you.
Thanks.
Okay, you said strategy role-playing game, because that's the
Absolutely.
we'll talk about it a lot in gameplay, because that is the thing. It's set up as a JRPG.
Right.
But there are some strategic elements about it. Again, that is a huge discussion to have. Do you want? I guess you did set up the story, huh? You said it's those 3 guys saving China.
Right. Yeah. Initially, it sort of starts local, like a lot of these games do, where you're just handling sort of a small-scale problem, these rebels. But then it quickly spirals into a much larger scope as your kingdom grows and your armies grow and the generals that you're fighting against grow in strength, and so it's pretty typical, fare on that front.
Or as the generals you face die in weakness.
Oh.
Gameplay.
Destiny of an Emperor presents itself as a classic JRPG in so many ways. 2D sprites, the towns, the setup of the towns. You've got an inn, you've got a couple of stores. And in some of these areas, you've got a little throne room, I guess, a palace, and that is a little bit unique, and we'll talk some about that. You've got a world map that is expansive that you're walking across and that you get into random battles on, and then you've even got turn-based battles. It sets it up as a JRPG, and in many ways, my argument is going to be that, like, behind the scenes, it really is. That's what it is. It's just a JRPG.
Is.
It has a lot of Dragon Warrior vibes.
It's got a lot of Dragon Quest
in appearance
vibes.
and just like functionality.
Yeah, it made me so hyped when I turned this game on. It almost looked like they copy-pasted assets. It was that similar in style.
When I started playing, I may have even mentioned last week when we were hearing about it, of like, this is the kind of game that I want to sit down and watch Kenny play. Because this is the genre and time period and style of game that I associate with Kenny. Just the early NES JRPG. And the reason why I do that primarily is because in college, in my room, he would come and play Dragon Quest. It came over as Dragon Warrior, Dragon Warrior, and slowly grind his way through that game. And I, at the time, didn't have is it tenacity? I didn't have the drive to be able to do that, because those games are slow.
Yeah, very.
But Kenny could just sit there for hours and fight slimes over and over again. And I enjoyed watching him enjoy the experience.
Yeah, you've watched me play Final Fantasy 1, I think. Like a
Yeah.
number of these old kind of classic titles are 100% right in my wheelhouse. And so I booted this one up and I was like, oh, baby.
Yeah. So you did the first play this week. You almost died, which would have kept your streak going.
You should have.
I didn't try to,
Even if you
but I
forced it.
almost did.
Yeah, which, man, the amount of time, it's just when you're trying to perform for others, that's what it
gets
is.
nervous.
You get a little
Absolutely.
nervous, and then you almost die every time.
It's too much pressure.
Nolan, if you watch the first play, you might realize why he almost died. It was because, yes, he had his items and armor, but he didn't equip any of it.
Yeah, I was fighting naked and didn't know it. I
Or
took
naked.
my armies unclad out onto the battlefield, and we almost got decimated because of that fact. So if you're leading armies, clothe them. You're welcome.
And give them a
Moral of the
weapon.
story. Yeah, and clothe them, give them a weapon, and then lead them in a fight.
And also
that-
feed them.
feed them too, which is not a big part of this game. There is a food component that I've seen in some other games where you, not in JRPG games typically, but where you have got to keep a certain amount of resources as you travel around because they're slowly depleting. Let me use that as just to say this game, as it starts as a JRPG, there's more strategy to it because you are not individual people. We named
Right.
those three, but those three are leading armies, and their HP bar is the number of military units that they are leading. And so as you travel, you've got to buy food, or you win a lot of food from beating other battles that feeds your army.
Yeah.
And if that food is ever depleted, then you start losing health until you buy more.
Just lore friendly, sure. But I don't know if we agree, Dustin, but I think I might agree with you that behind the scenes, that's just HP.
Yeah,
That's just HP
functionally,
for
it's
5
just
characters.
HP.
Listen,
Yeah,
you've
well-
got HP and you've got MP. The HP here are the number of military units,
It's
and
a
the
number.
MP is your tactic points.
Yep.
That is mostly true. I mostly agree. However, my understanding is, and I never
Yes.
verified this in the game, that as you lose army members, the
Yes.
effectiveness of your army does go down. So, like, based on the size of your army,
Yeah.
you're going to be doing less and less as
Yeah.
it shrinks, which there are games that do that even with your health, and it still makes sense, but is a little bit more accurate to this number represents a group of units we
Right.
have fighting, not just HP. Functionally, though, it plays like an RPG.
Yeah, I think it's actually kind of a stretch to call it anything other than that.
They were trying to put a unique spin on JRPG, which I guess hadn't been around very long at all. So I think maybe at
Right.
the beginning they were just trying to experiment, right? Because JRPG is a relatively new thing, 1989. That's super early, guys. Was Final Fantasy 187? I feel like,
It was
or
before.
86? Yeah. So JRPGs have been around for at least a few years, and so I think Capcom was like, "Hey, with our first, let's try to do something a little bit different here." And
That's
I feel like
fine.
they did. It did feel a little bit different and present itself a little bit different, but it is JRPG.
That's fine. Yeah, I'm fine with them, like, I don't know, introducing something different, but it's not quite different. What they did introduce that is different is freaking how many characters can you get? 150?
150.
Oh,
50.
150
In an
total
NES
playable
title? That's
characters.
more than Fire Emblem, guys. That's
wait.
way more.
So you're saying, are there 150 named characters, or you can recruit
Yes.
150 of them?
Both.
Yeah.
Well, you can't recruit every single one.
No.
I think you can, given enough time. Like, enough encounters against a certain general, and you're
Oh,
always going to be
okay.
given the option to recruit
Still.
that general.
That's
The option to recruit. Okay, yeah, still, I don't want to get into the nitty gritty, but That's a lot.
Yeah.
And
It's
here's
a
the thing.
ton.
Here's the thing. I think they do really well with it in that like you can recruit 150 of them. You're not going to in a playthrough. You'll probably recruit a couple dozen. And then in certain towns, you can go and change out your active party members with those that are on the reserves. You can have in your traveling team 7 generals at any time. 7 players. 7.
You're right.
But only the strongest 5 fight, and
Right.
one of the 7 can be a tactician. And I'm still not entirely sure what that is, but I believe that whatever abilities they learn can then be used by the team. The magic can be then used collectively by the team, and that tactician can either fight if it's one of your 5, or if you've got more than 5 that you're traveling with, can be off the playing field, so not actively battling, but you're still reaping the benefits of them being a tactician.
I think it's a little unnecessarily
convoluted.
I think just being like, here's a ton of characters. They're not that different, but you can pick 5 of them would have been fine. But I didn't even like know that what you just said about the 7th or the like non in battle characters. I don't know. They don't explain.
It doesn't explain
anything
in this game.
And I didn't have a booklet, of course.
It doesn't.
So
but
I was
that's not
looking it up.
uncommon. And,
Sure.
well, and I did pull the booklet up because I didn't want to play through with the guide. I wanted that like raw experience of like figure it out. But the first time I did try and play, I ran around naked and almost lost. So I knew I needed to at least pick up a few things. And the managing of your generals, the way the sort of magic system works with your tactics and your tacticians, all of that would have been significantly harder to figure out without, especially because they localize this game. They give you the whole game in English so you can follow everything. And I get they're trying to like keep the fact that this is going on in China with these Chinese characters authentic. But then the names of your tactics, your spells basically, are all kept in Chinese. So you don't know what they do.
Right. At all.
What?
And there's a good amount of tactics too. It's not, and they are replaced. So even if you like start to figure out what one does, a few levels later you might not even have that ability anymore. Now, once you start to realize, or you have the manual, you can figure out that, okay, there's basic categories. So the top left, that first one, is always going to be your fire attack, and it will grow over time, so it's not just single use, but it can hit the whole team, and then the power. The one right beside that is water-based. Okay, and then the one under that is healing. So like you can eventually figure those things out, but they're not in English, and there's no explanation in game.
No.
But really, there's no explanation in game about anything.
And Kenny, I did die. You said you survived the first play. I did, because I didn't know that either. Like you typically come with something. You don't have to like at the beginning gear
Well,
up.
and when you pull them up, it shows you having them.
Sure.
Even so
I was like, cool.
Right. The look of equipping it is so subtle, which leads to a whole conversation about sort of UI in general, because it A, wasn't super clear,
I don't know.
and then B, was so cumbersome to move around.
Hey,
Dude.
Okay, so to equip a new helmet, for example, you need to go to an armory or whatever, buy, select helmet, select who to give it to, exit the menus, go to your items, select the general, select the helmet, equip, and then go to items, go to general, select old helmet, pass to new general, and then if you need to sell items too, that will take another half hour. It is very cumbersome, but not different from the other JRPGs of its time.
True.
No, pretty normal for the era. Well, relatively normal for the era. However, most JRPGs of the time aren't trying to get you to swap out from a list of 150 playable characters and expecting you to only really have the resources to carry one army's worth of items and then physically swap those items from one general to another general, as well as actually managing those generals, because you have the 7 in your group, and then you can keep, I think, 70 total, like, saved in your memory. You can't have all 150. But if you want to swap them out, you have to go to another NPC who manages your army, and interact and swap. There is a ton of slow and efficient menuing. Even if the item menu had stayed up as you were moving from items, and when you like moved or equipped something, it didn't immediately go back out, but gave you the option to like just do the next item, would have saved me like 3 hours of gameplay on its own.
Well, it also does that thing that other games did at the time, but it gets so out of hand where the windows pop up on top of each other, and it looks like you have a virus in your game. Like, you just have text boxes on text boxes, and you're like, I don't even know where I am right now.
Yeah, there's sometimes where, like, because there is you've got, like, use, equip, and one of them is pass, and you've got drop. If you click drop, you might have just dropped your new sword you just bought, and you can't pick it up again.
Pick up. Like, you can't hit A. Pick up.
And sometimes, like you said, there's a box that's still on the screen that says yes or no, but you're not even focused on it. So it's scary from time to time, for sure.
I was watching Kenny play last night, and you were saying that it's cumbersome to move around. He was he was save stating every 5 seconds when he was moving around, because it's just
that
like
is the safe thing to do, for sure. This game is on how long to beat. I think it's got it around 20 hours or something like that, and that's probably about right. But half of that is your menuing, or more. More of that is your menuing.
It's one of those games that the length of it is because it's a job, not because of the content to get through. Like, I doubt there's a ton to actually experience in the game. It's just it's interrupted so often that I'm just like, it feels like a job. I don't know. So it does feel like a strategy game in that way, because you're having to read a ton and menu a ton and stop what you're doing. But
it's also not terribly short either, but it's one of those games that you're going to want to walk and talk to all the NPCs, because they're dropping you clues about items to find and the real standard RPG stuff for this era. And if you don't either have a guide or are willing to search in every single little barrel that you come across in case there's a random axe in it that your party needs, and talk to every single NPC and remember the stuff they say, because you're going to have other interactions that you don't realize are meaningful, but that you're going to just miss if you haven't been paying really good attention and trying stuff. There's a lot here to this game.
Something I do think they did a good job with in setting it apart from like normal RPG fare is in line with what's going on with the story and the world and everything. Like, you get a lot of like personality from some of the generals. Like, they'll say a line before a battle starts, and it's like very dramatic. It's like, I am Liu Bei, and this is like, you're not going to stand here or something, you know? And like, that was welcome. They did that often too, like in towns and stuff. I like that.
They also have a whole bunch of different looks for those characters as they pop up and have faces. I don't know if they're all 150 actually distinct and unique, but there's a bunch of variety there.
I think they're all unique. Some of them might just be color palette swaps, you know, but like, they all have portraits is what we're talking about. Yeah, like really well-designed portraits for NES,
NES, yeah.
Absolutely. They look great.
But I like story, right? Especially in my JRPGs. There's a lot here, but it is hard to follow because they didn't translate the names of the characters either. So all of the character names for a Western viewpoint can all blend together, because you've got, I don't know if I should do, I mean, you've got like so many, and you know how like last names are first, right? I think it's kind of, last names are presented first often, I think, in Chinese names, and then their first names are actually second. So you've got a lot that are Kao Ang, Kao Chun, Kao Rin, Kao Ziu, Kao Zeng, Kao Zin, Kao Zai. They're all part of the same family, but it's hard to keep track with all of those, and that was just one family. Remember, you've got like 150 plus of these characters.
There's no incentive to like choose one of the 150 over others, in my opinion. Like, I know there are differences, but like,
it's their stats.
Yeah, but
right.
Yeah, but I don't care.
You're going to get enough sort of default party members that you're keeping with you anyways, that you're really only choosing 2 or 3 of the generals that you sort of pick up along the way to become core to your party. Yeah. And so many of those 150 are going to have low base stats. And I think in a lot of cases, their base stats don't even grow with levels. They're just static. And so you have a huge portion of those 150 that are basically worthless.
Yeah.
That's not to say that you shouldn't pick them up, because a kind of interesting mechanic is that you're going to fight these generals in the wild.
Right.
You beat them enough times and hire them or trade something to them or whatever to like get them into your group. They're no longer going to show up as an enemy as long as they're in your party. And so there's a little bit of like strategic management for how hard do I want my fights to be on whether you bring people in or let them stay as enemies.
And not only in the random battles in the wild, but some of those generals will show up then at the castles or at the gates, the main battles that you have to fight. And if you recruit them in the wild, they won't. And so like there is a unique strategy type element here that doesn't appear in a lot of other JRPGs. And I want to take that strategy conversation to kind of like a final thing here with gameplay is the actual battles, because we haven't even talked really about that. In a lot of JRPGs, you have a few options, right? Attack, defend, magic, and item. That's usually what you have, right? In this one, you have a few more than that. You've got battle, which is fight. You've got tactic, which is magic. You've got defend, and you've got item. So those are relatively normal. But then you've got 3 leader-specific options for you, the first character in your first general in your party, and that's all out, retreat, and report. Yeah.
What is report?
Which I found super helpful. I think Kenny eventually used it a lot too.
Absolutely. As I got further into the game, I used it all the time, only because it did sort of inform your strategic decisions. So report just let you get information about the enemy generals so that you knew how much defense they had, how much strength they had, whether they were scan. Yeah, whether they were a magic user, kind of all of the stuff about them so that you knew who to be focusing first, who to be afraid of, all that kind of stuff.
That should be first on the list.
Well, it's super nice is that it doesn't even consume a turn, Nolan.
Oh, okay. Well, I goofed.
It's just free if you go through the process.
I did end up using the all-out option
all out.
a lot.
Absolutely, you have to.
That's arguably the most strategic game option out of the list because it's just kind of like it's the equivalent of sending out like a group of troops to fight someone else and just like the outcome happens. And also I'm lazy after doing this for a couple times, and so I use that one quite often.
You almost called it. It's auto battle. It is you are not in control anymore. Everybody just slams into each other. Bad decision when you're facing notable enemies. Really good decision when you're just facing scrub armies.
Yeah, and something you have to be careful with because you lose the ability while you're doing that to be casting your spells or focusing your attacks. The AI still works exactly like they would.
Yeah.
And so they are still even casting spells. And so every once in a while, if you leave like a general up that you're fighting, not just like little troops, and you do auto battle, you'll have 1 or 2 of your characters that just get focused with spells and just get like decimated instantly. So you got to be careful about when you use it. But these are slow enough battles that having a speed the battle up setting was really, really smart of them because this game would have felt way too grindy and onerous without it. Like, majorly.
I'm glad they put it in there.
Aged.
We mentioned the portraits and how much we liked the variety and that it looked good. And we mentioned that this game looks like Dragon Warrior, which I think is a beautiful game.
Identical.
For the time period, outside of the fact that a lot of your assets are sort of going to be reused and, you're relatively limited there, this is a really nice looking game. It was sharp.
Hey, slime, green slime, blue slime, metal slime. They're all reused assets. Like that you
absolutely,
and that's smart to do. It gives you a whole lot of variety with on your limited capacity. I think graphics hold up remarkably well for a 1989 early NES title. Like I wrote in my notes, we've talked about it and said it many times, but it's comparable to Dragon Warrior, which is the standard for early, for some of the earliest JRPGs.
I do wish that the battle screens were not just black, and then your character white text and then the pink bar. I feel like Dragon Warrior had the backdrops like grass field or some sort of.
Oh, they had a full thing, but you didn't even see your warrior. I like that we were able to see our sort of military units.
Yeah, I guess there's a trade-off
between Final Fantasy and Dragon Warrior.
It's just a little immersion.
You have you have the layout that's more like Final Fantasy with your characters against their characters
on the left,
but you didn't have as much like sprite differentiation, and you didn't have the cool like battle animations. If when you used your tactics, if there were some like really cool visuals that showed you what they were, even that would have helped a ton in knowing fire magic, earth magic, defensive magic, whatever. So, but for the stuff that they showed, it looked really good.
And those portraits, yeah, we all agreed, so good.
Portraits are really good, and they're realistic. You know, like they're not going for some kind of like fantasy vibe or whatever. They're realistic, and they look really good, man. They are. Yeah. It's pixel art. It really is.
Yep, big time.
And for 150, that's a lot of dedication. And then likewise, I think the music. I wonder if we differ here. I thought the music is actually really good.
Oh,
there's not tons of entries, and it is a difficult sound font sometimes because it's piercing. It's a lot more piercing. And they are relatively short tracks, so it leads to a lot of repetition. But I thought so many of the tracks were really, really good.
But fitting. Yeah, very
super fitting.
Accurate because again, with the realism, I think the music kind of goes along with that and how they did the art style. Like they're basing it on a book that's very serious book, and then that's based on reality. It's like the music was fitting. I actually really liked it. I wanted more. I wanted I don't know, length of track doesn't usually bother me, but I wanted more tracks. I wanted like different ones.
Sure.
Yeah, that would have been welcome. It is worth pointing out that they very much were trying to keep the sort of Chinese vibe of where this is happening, and a few places leaned into some almost sort of like tropes musically on the whole kind of Asian front. You got some of those dun-dun-dun-dun-duns that felt a little heavy-handed, but they totally hit it otherwise. And even those I think are, like if you play a Western and you hear the whoa 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 right before a gunfight, you're okay, yeah, like duh. And so yes, it was a little trite, a little expected, but good outside of being too on the nose.
There are a few tracks that are only used for special battles or for really epic moments, and they're actually really good. None of these would I put on like a relaxing playlist or a cool, because they are short and because they're piercing. They really are. And so I liked listening to the music, but the longer I played, I would actually play Antonin style, we were saying in Discord this week, and mute the game so that I could listen to other music or watch other things, just because you're spending so much time grinding or doing whatever that you're hearing the same thing over and over again. It's good, but it gets repetitive for sure.
Do you guys think Capcom reconsidered making RPGs after this, or do you think they were like, yeah, that went well? Because we can't name a ton, especially on the NES. Like they were a platformer company. Let's be real.
Right.
I wonder if this game made them like not for us, or I really don't know how the game was received. Like it might have been popular. I don't know.
Because they did Breath of Fire,
Yes.
Breath of Fire, and that is a series with many games. So maybe they were just like, hey, this one works, so let's just go with that and not try to spread too thin. Maybe. I don't know how well this game was received. It is interesting that this, out of all games that come out in Japan or China, it made it over here. Some of the games that we played didn't make it over here and easily could have, but this one is very. It's very China specific.
Yeah.
And yet it does make it over here, which is
weird.
super interesting. It did have it was successful enough to have a sequel with Tenchi wo Kurao. Oh man, that was bad. 2, or The Devouring of Heaven and Earth 2, The Story of Kong Ming. But that was released exclusively in Japan in 1991. I think, as Kenny had maybe mentioned at the start.
So that makes me think that maybe American audiences were like on this one, and they were like,
maybe
they saw that the sales weren't super high, and so they were like, yes, let's do a sequel. People like it, but not in the States.
Yeah, that looks to be what happened here for sure. I think the biggest aging factor is some of the things that we mentioned, is that in the era that it came out, there's very little to no explanations. Really, in this game, there's no explanations. And so much of the menuing is so much of the grind. In this
Yes.
game, what's cool is that you don't have to grind a lot like you do in traditional JRPGs, because it really emphasizes finding the right generals and building your team that way. But the grind really does come into the menuing, because there's a lot of it. There's a lot of items and armor. There's even like offensive items and defensive items that you might be using, and then having to cycle through the military units in the game the way the game wants you to. It just takes so long. So for someone to play it today, that is a big commitment to make.
It's a big ask, yeah. And that doesn't feel good. Like menuing as gameplay, that doesn't feel. It's
Right.
not a good experience, you know.
Unless you are of the strategic variety that likes just like Kenny could literally play a 8-hour Civilization game,
Yeah.
where all it is menus.
I know, but
all
those
it is
menus are a lot prettier.
Oh yeah, they're
and
a lot
shorter.
prettier. A lot prettier and shorter. But there is a subset of people that do like menus, you know, but that's not the majority of
Menu
people.
mongers.
Ooh. This game, the NES cartridge, is $31 used or $255 brand new. It's up there.
Limited run?
Collector's-
What? Dang,
Collector's
that's
edition.
expensive.
Final thoughts.
At the end of each and every episode, we determine whether or not the game gets our vote for New Game Plus status, which is our general thumbs up or thumbs down. It does require 2/3 of the votes to swing one way or the other. Woo! I don't remember who went first last week, but one of you should go first this week.
Okay. Well, I was lost most of the week playing this game.
Sure.
I felt like I needed a map and I didn't have it. I didn't have my Google Maps. I didn't have anything. So really though, like that's going to affect anyone's experience coming back to play this game. And we've played games before that didn't have guides, instructions. We didn't have the manual, and I've let it slide because you can either quickly learn it or in a reasonable amount of time feel like you're in control. But this one felt kind of like hidden, like everything was hidden from me. Like, yeah, I want to recruit the best generals and progress. I don't really know how, and I don't know a great way to do that without having to menu a ton, walk around a ton. It just wasn't a great gaming experience. The presentation is great, 10 out of 10. I really like the presentation. It's actually, yes, it's like, it's not derivative of Dragon Warrior. I think it has its own style, and that's impressive to do in 1990 on NES. But no New Game Plus, no.
Okay, that's one no. I will go next. I played a good amount this week. I got through the majority of the game. Scratch that. I got through all of the game. This morning I beat it.
Okay.
And so in a week I put in 20 plus hours. I don't know how long it was, but it was a considerable
Wow.
experience because it takes that long to, even with save states. It's a lengthy game, and it's a big world map. And I enjoyed my experience. There's something that you know that I like JRPGs. We've talked about that before. But there's something that just works, like, even if it's not like, I guess, quote unquote fun, there's a tactical experience of there's something of the strategy component of switching out items, getting the best units, getting them the best weapons. There's something there that works for me and that feels good, even if I am doing it on autopilot. You know, again, this week I watched shows and I did other things while playing some of this game, just because I was doing a tactical task over on one end, and then being able to use my mind to just enjoy entertainment on the other. And there's something that works in that genre for me. But this game has aged tremendously, not graphically, not musically, but on how slow it is, and just in the era that it came out and how little it is explained. It works for me because I like to have a guide, and I like to read the manual, and I like to be told which generals to pick up and how to equip them. And so as I'm walking through with a guide, it's an enjoyable experience. Playing this without a guide sounds like the ninth layer of hell. But it also sounds like something that Kenny could find enjoyment in, and that's why I like to watch him play these games. I enjoyed my experience this week, but I would certainly say it is only for a specific audience playing in a specific way. And that is not the majority of people. And so I would still say, even though I beat it this morning, that I would not give it my vote for New Game Plus status.
Yeah, which kind of echoes my take. I also absolutely love this game. You're not wrong that it's right up my alley. It's a really fun take and kind of reimagining on what for me is a really comfortable and familiar era of gaming. But like you, Dustin, I can't give it new Game Plus. I think the UI hurdles pretty much alone, like that alone, are a deal breaker for most modern gamers. Like managing your party and your items. If that wasn't such a massive chore, I think lots of people would really appreciate this sort of RPG. It's inventive, it's different, it's got that quasi-historical vibe, it's a different setting than a lot of sort of rote fantasy, being somewhere kind of real-worldish, which is fun. But yeah, I've got to put my bias aside. So fun for me. There's probably some people out there that will hear us explain it and love it and say, like, that's for me. But I think most people aren't going to want to care enough about the good parts of this game to get past the negative parts of the game. So, yeah, breaks my heart. No New Game Plus.
Which means, I think for the third week in a row, our game of the week is not New Game Plus certified.
Oh, man.
But what did you think? We had an all-time low YouTube vote this week, 297 votes. 7% said yes, it's worth playing today. 5% said no, go play something else. 87% have never played it before.
This was not a very well-known game. I mean, despite it being Capcom and despite when you think of NES RPGs, people are thinking of Final Fantasy, they're thinking of Dragon Warrior, they're thinking of all of these other things. I'd never heard of this game until this week, and so I'm not surprised by those results.
Some of our listeners wrote in, won't be able to include all of those thoughts this week, but Anthony said everything about the gameplay here is tedious. The menu system isn't as refined as other NES RPGs, equipping weapons is complicated, and battles are long and drawn out, unless sped up by the necessary automatic option. Tactics are neat, which are similar to your typical RPG magic systems, and add fire/water attacks, healing, and resurrection. As an NES game, the graphics are actually pretty good. I like the idea that one sprite doesn't equal a man, but a whole army, and oddly enough, how fast the sprites move in general is a small but welcomed pace from other NES RPGs. Capcom games do music very well, so no surprise there. Destiny of an Emperor is an underrated and forgotten NES RPG, but I wouldn't put it on the same pedestal as Final Fantasy or Dragon Warrior, so no NGP for me.
Sums it up for you, Kenny. Capcom's such a big name for any game that they produce, even at this time, to like not be known. So this is an interesting one for sure.
They certainly have some misses, though. We've played a few.
Yeah, but generally they produce quality, even if they're trying something unique and different. Yeah. So it doesn't always pay off, but there's always some kind of Capcom charm there. There always is. Yep. Clint said, I don't think I need to finish this one this week to have enough to say. The game is an extremely old school JRPG, and while it does some interesting things with the tactician role and the sheer amount of recruitment options, it's just a little frustrating to try and dig into. Take the game from the beginning. Your beginning characters have equipment in their inventory, but they don't have it equipped. In order to equip a weapon and armor, we went through that because Kenny had that as well. Unfortunately, the combat is also pretty slow and doesn't have all that much going on with it. You're either hitting auto battle or you're fleeing. I don't flee from battles. There are some hard-hitting abilities utilized through the tactician menus, but you only get a few uses of those, at least early in the game. There just aren't really any interesting interactions in combat to speak of. It's too slow, too bulky, and reads like a middle school history book. It's very unfortunate in every way because the story is good. They just couldn't deliver with this title. I'm spending my week reading up on the romance of the Three Kingdoms instead.
Clint, a general never flees. Do you understand me?
He goes down with his ship.
Armies and sleeveys. Finally, Garlisle said the game is held back by being an NES game. Limited text space leaves a giant cast and grand historical fiction tale feeling lifeless and dry. And many important UI features are clunky or lack explanation in game, meaning you crack open a guide for this game or suffer for it. It also stumbles on typical uncapped NES RPG encounter rates too. Oh, and there's a weird glitch that's hard to predict or control that can prevent you from actually finishing the game, so that's cool. And all this is a shame because there's actually good here. The tactics are interesting once you start having actual options, and some of the subtler
Settlers of Catan.
Kenny, say subtler.
Subtler.
Spell it?
Yeah.
Subtler.
And you're telling me you're just ignoring the B?
Yeah.
Rude. The subtler mechanics, like HP thresholds, add genuine strategy. An auto battle function in this era was unheard of. Random mini-boss general encounters is a great idea, and the soundtrack's kind of a jam too. Heck, it even encourages finding better generals over grinding levels, which is crazy for the genre at the time. The game was remarkable for its era, and there's a ton of cool design in this, but I don't think its playability quite stands the test of time.
Okay, I think he's right. I'm picturing this game on SNES even, and the improvements maybe that could have in some of those areas.
Yeah, dude. Man.
That could be cool.
Yes.
Absolutely. Or even just like a modern remake, even if it felt retro, but just like with good UI and a little bit of polish and some stuff. Like this is a good game that's just in a bad package.
This is not on Capcom's remake radar. I'll just tell you that, Kenny.
We are setting aside Destiny of an Emperor, and we are randomly selecting from our retro master list, user submitted, user generated, 15 years old or older, any genre, any console. From that list, we are randomizing now. We're going to be playing a game whose title does not make sense. We're going to be playing a game that was released in 2005 for the GBA.
Pretty current.
Do most games come out in Japan first?
Yeah.
Most Nintendo games do.
Yes.
I bet there's something behind that. This game was developed, was at least published by a company that we might be familiar with because we've recently played a game from them in Capcom.
Oh no!
Okay.
This is a back-to-back Capcom exclusive.
We're still at the Capcom headquarters.
This is the fourth and final installment in the sub-series of the franchise.
What?
It is called Mega Man Zero 4.
Oh, 4?
That's why it
what
doesn't
about
make
the other
sense.
ones? We got to start with
what about Zero?
Okay, so I own Mega Man Zero. There are 4?
Mega Man Zero 4.
Wow.
What is Mega Man Zero that
It's
is
the
different from Mega
GBA
Man?
line of Mega Man, and it had Zero, the character, as a playable character in them.
Zero is the red saber wielding?
Correct.
Okay.
And he's awesome. And this Mega Man Zero is sick, and GBA is sick. So this should, and it's Capcom, so this should be amazing.
This is barely retro, 2005.
Oh, what?
Barely made the cut.
Okay.
But find a copy of Mega Man Zero 4 played along with us this week. And if you want Kenny's reaction to the game, don't listen to the podcast because you won't hear it. You can watch the video instead.
Join us in Discord so that you can start chatting with our community and also leaving your thoughts on the game of the week. We want an all-time high of commentaries coming in for Mega Man Zero 4.
It's not going to happen.
ngppodcast.com. Then you can click join us on Discord.
Guys, I have good news.
What?
We had 4 people decide to join us as patrons
Dang.
this week who were not patrons before.
Whoa.
So special shout out to Mr. Skyfish, to Frank, to Michael, and to Brandon. Thank you guys for hitting us up on patreon.com and showing your support. You join a large cast of folks who support this show, including our producer level supporters, as follows: Marley and Anthony, Austin, Ben, Bethany Fox, Brunt, Carrie, Captain Protein, Dan the Man, DB Muppet, Francesca, Hi, I'm Josh, Joey, Jordan, Justin, Corey, Lorelai, Maxima, Mr. Lot, Nawell, Secret Talk of Evermore, Shauna Thomas, Unbedevable, Wardonis Williams, Zion, and our amazing director level supporters who go way above and beyond. Thank you to Antonin, Brojim, and Garlisle. We appreciate you guys.
It's just like our game of the he's really good at that, but it's also just like our game of the week. Like that part of it takes a long time, but it's kind of rewarding.
150 producers.
we got to get 150 by the end of the week. You can follow us on all of our social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. All of those links are in the show notes. Make sure you listen directly on any podcast provider of your choice. Subscribe so that you're the first to get new NGP episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a kind rating and review. This episode was edited and produced by our good friend Tom Tate, who his days with us, at least as an editor of our show, are narrowing down. We've mentioned it on the last few episodes, but we are searching for a new podcast editor, a weekly editor. If that is you, or if you know of someone, please email us at ngppodcast@gmail.com to get the conversation rolling. Join us next week as we play Mega Man 04. Until then, I'm still Dustin, the ruler of China.
I'm Kenny, one of his generals.
Yeah.
I'm Capcom's #1 fan.
And this has been New Game Plus.